the biggest game of the weekend and the most iconic fixture between South Africa and Japan ever played. This game was supposed to be a rematch in Brighton. Instead, they played in a mostly empty Wembley Stadium. A big crowd than I expected, frankly, of like 20 odd K. Bizarre bit of scheduling to not put that in Brighton, to instead put it in the biggest stadium in the UK.
Yeah.
Which is in London, same time as England were playing Australia and the Barbars were playing the New Zealand 15, which kind of meant like you had a completely split fan base.
Yeah, rugby's not that big.
Truly bizarre bit of scheduling.
Yeah, and I know that there's a huge South African population in London.
Yeah.
And so that
which is what they're tapping into, right?
Yeah.
But you then lose the casual rugby audience as well.
Yeah.
So you end up with a slightly weird occasion where a load of people came and watched South Africa pulverise Japan. Look, this wasn't the greatest contest in the world. I don't think anyone will argue with that on the front. But I do think there's some interesting points around it as we look at this game, as we look at like, what was a pretty resounding result for South Africa.
Yeah. Whilst we're here, I am kind of glad they didn't put this in Brighton because I think it would have been a very underwhelming crowning
It's the game we expected 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, other than... So South Africa have now played Japan 4 times, I want to say, because there was 2 in 2019, 1 pre-World Cup friendly, and then the quarter-final where the heartless bastards, South Africa, knocked out all of our favourite team by being absolutely brutal and mauling them off the park. But yeah, it was quite disappointing from a neutral perspective of wanting Japan to put up a fight against the best team in the world at the moment. And yeah, it was pretty complete from South Africa. You know, there were tries from up front and there were tries from the back. So yeah, you can't really ask for too much more from that front.
Yeah. South Africa's kicking game completely on top. Japan struggled in the backfield a little bit. I think Yazaki's a real talent. I really enjoy him at fullback. Obviously took some time out from the international rugby to focus on his university studies. Is now back and is a really exciting player. Took his try incredibly well. Yeah. But a few times we saw that Japanese backfield really caught out, and this has been a bit of a problem for a few years now. It was the later period Jamie Joseph era, and it's continuing into the Eddie Jones era, of none of their wingers are particularly good under the high ball.
No.
And Ishida, brilliant player, love watching him, love him with the ball, but he's not great under the high ball.
No.
He's not a Cheslin Colby or Curtly Amasa type, where they just utterly halfpenny back in the day, where they leap 30 times their body height and manage to get up and...
He's supposed to be better than Cheslin Colby, is what we've heard Eddie Jones say. But you're right, he's outstanding on the counter-attack, but it is the technical bits of like, how do we get him into positions where we can counter-attack that he kind of struggles on. And a lot of the wingers they've had in the last couple of years have been very much similar. When you look at like the Jolo Nakai and Bulas and the world and so on, like, you know, they've struggled for technically excellent wingers ever since kind of we started seeing less of Kotaro Matsushima, and yeah, it's unfortunate for sure.
So this comes back to something that I think about Japan in general, right? That I am really intrigued by this, and I think, look, I've got shit a few times for, I wouldn't say overrating Japan, but a little bit, right? In that it's not that I think necessarily this Japan team will be good in 2 years' time, as we've seen from Japan in 2015, 2019, to some degree 2023, where they were better than they had been in the previous few years, but still fell short against Argentina in the last game. But I'm kind of holding space for the possibility it could happen, you know? Like, I kind of look at this team and I'm like, I can see a world in which this team kicks on and becomes, not world beaters, but like a very decent team that get out the group in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Or, you know, now get to the like quarterfinals with the round 16 and so on. I can see that happening, right? I can look at this team and see a side who might cause an upset in a few years' time.
Especially with Eddie there as well.
Exactly. And you look at Eddie's history, you look at what they're trying to do, you look at their attack and the way it's building.
And the way he innovates, and Japan historically innovates as a rugby team.
Yeah.
Like,
their flaws are enormous, but the things that they're good at, they are clearly trying to become the best in the world at. And they're trying to build this very specific game plan. This Chosoku rugby, as it's known, as they call it, which is this like super fast, hyper speed rugby, which plays at a pace that no one came up with.
Other than Canada women, clearly.
Yes, obviously. And look, at its best, we saw England and New Zealand in the first 5-10 minutes of games last year unable to live with it. They just like could not cope at all with what was going on. And then Japan tired and New Zealand, England got used to it. And in that time, Japan has scored 2 tries at most, and that's all they could manage in the period they were doing. They're clearly trying to condition their forwards to do that, And yet this comes with a critical flaw, right? Which is Chosoku Rugby will never beat the Springboks. And as I was looking at it, I was kind of like, oh, this is like, it's a fundamentally flawed system, right? Like, what they are building is a game plan that if the World Cup draw goes right for them, can see them finish third as an absolute best case scenario. And for Japan, that'd be an incredible result. Obviously, finishing third in the World Cup is better than they've ever done in the past, right? Make the semi-final, so on. That's what Eddie's in to do, is to try and make a semi-final. Like, that is their goal. And yet, they're building a game plan, is bargaining, is gambling on. If we come up against the Springboks in any stage, at the round of 16, at the quarterfinals, at the semi-finals, we are going to lose 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
And I think this style of play could beat Ireland, could beat France, could beat New Zealand in a hypothetical, a handful of times out of 100 they play it. I think South Africa beat them 100 times out of 100. And I was looking at this game on Saturday and I was just going like, I don't see any world which Japan playing this way beat South Africa, because their pack is conditioned for playing at high speed for long periods of time, not for power. So they couldn't live with them in scrum, couldn't live with them in line out, and critically then, couldn't live with them in the carry. So many times we saw Japan get one great carry, two great carries, they ran some lovely phase play and attacking shape to get over the game line, and then one big tackle came, and it quelled the momentum completely, and it just went. And suddenly we're left in a situation, right, where Chosoku Rugby, the fundamental flaw was shown, even greater than it was against England, where England, they could run them off their feet, and an occasion that big tackle would come, but then they can restart it by forcing those players to get around the pitch and so on, right? There are 15 players on the pitch at all times, unless, you pick up a yellow card, which Japan seemed to be addicted to high shots that weekend, which did not help their cause at all. But 15 players is a lot on the pitch, right? You will take a tackle at some point.
Yeah.
And if you're risking almost every single tackle, against a team like the Springboks, and there will be other teams conditioned like that over the World Cup because their style is so in vogue at the minute, right? They're so dominant at the minute. Other teams will be conditioned for power over the next 2 years. I just think it's such a gamble. I just think it's a gamble that's not going to pay off.
It's the famous Mike Tyson quote, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
You can try and play the world's fastest and slickest looking rugby, but you need to a certain extent to match the opposition physically. Obviously, we have seen a lot of teams in the past, a lot of them Japan teams, who have outsmarted a bigger, a more physical team. But as you say, you can try and run a really fast style of rugby, and then it happens so many times on the weekend. Ahir Sneyman will put in a huge hit, or somebody like Vilko Low will just come in and absolutely monster you, or will power through a breakdown and just slow you down a fraction of a second, and it throws you off the timing. This rehearsed style of rugby they're trying to play. You
can't get any reasonable ball off scrum. You can't get a maul going to play off. You're left with no situations to attack off, and that quells your first phase momentum. It means you can't then get into the running 2-3 phases down the line.
Yeah, and if anything, if you were to put these two teams side by side and say which of these two teams is more qualified to play this super fast style of rugby, you'd actually pick the Springboks team, because they have that real brute physicality. They have that set piece dominance where they have a launch pad they can play off, and obviously they use their set piece very differently to how Japan try and use theirs. But they could, they are good enough and a versatile enough team that they could do that if that's how they wanted to play. And I agree with your point about 100 times out of 100 South Africa were going to win that game. There was no point during that you looked at Japan and thought they are going to get on top here.
Yeah.
The one try that they scored, I would imagine South Africa were really frustrated that they conceded.
Yeah.
And granted, at that point, they're already 40-odd points up. And I don't think Felix Jones is going to be pulling that up in the review and saying, lads, you're all taking a bollocking for this. But, giving away a penalty, then having a tap and go, they've gotten to the try line quicker than you have. You know, it's just one of those situations. It will happen in a game at some point, but they will be a little bit disappointed that happened. And that was the one opportunity that Japan actually took.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said about the fact that Shizaku, the fullback, who takes the quick tap and scores off it, shows they're everyone plays fast, everyone is looking up, everyone's playing heads-up rugby, right? And it is a moment of that coming off. And yet, the rest of the game, Japan would create chances, but they would create line breaks. South Africa's scramble is the best in the world. They are so good at getting that cover in behind. Obviously, the catch-up defence was their invention, and getting those forwards across, getting other people in line, meaning that you've got not just someone making the tackle once a break is made, but someone on the following phase to then follow up and smash.
Yeah.
And it meant that Japan couldn't build on any of their chances. And it felt and we haven't talked that much about South Africa, right? But it became an on-trend ride for them. They were playing against a team who were not conditioned to live with the power that they bring. Yeah. And so they could change and bring in a tight head who didn't exist 3 weeks ago, who Rassie just drew on a whiteboard and went, if we all wish really hard, South Africa, if we all phone and donate now, we can make Zach Porfin a real rugby player who will actually play at the weekend. Right? He can do that. You can afford to do that because they're physically powerful enough and that entire team can get on top. They can put Andre Esterhuizen in the pack.
Yes.
Which is the other interesting side here, right? Is Andre Esterhuizen coming in, having a try disallowed, but still playing in the back row.
Yeah, and playing like in the line out and everything, and involved in all of that. I don't think he jumped, but
no.
I don't doubt that he could. How much of this do we think is just Rassie kind of trolling and I guess in a way flexing his hand a little bit here? Or because we know Rassie likes to do this, he likes to ruffle a few feathers and he likes to entertain, right?
Yeah.
He knows that he has a devoted set of supporters and that he is a rugby genius. So he quite enjoys flexing that from time to time. How much of this do we think is that and how much of this do we think is him going, we've got a World Cup in a couple of years' time and we like to do the 6-2 or 7-1 bench. We need somebody who can cover as a hybrid player in the forwards and backs. What do you reckon?
I think there's a few sides to this. I think one level is Rassie has a sense of humour. And he is just going, yeah, why not? We're playing
I think it's really entertaining that he does stuff like this.
Power over them, right?
Yeah.
And like, again, a lot of the tries in the kicking game really smartly executed. Sasha Farbo and Gomez Zulu, you know, wasn't like, every touch wasn't gold, but like when the gold comes, it's worth waiting for, you know? And like, he is so good to watch. Colby having... Again, like the best game he's had against Japanese opposition for a long time. And Curtly Aronson coming off the bench, like that whole back line, you know, Jesse Krylov had a really good game as well. Like, and defensively, you still have to shut down that like really fast Japanese attack and did a great job of that. All of that really, really useful, right? He knew that was all in place. He knew that, you know, you don't get into this game thinking we're going to win 100 times out of 100. He goes in thinking we're going to win 98 times out of 100, right? So I can take a couple of gambles. I can bring him on, and if things are going bad, then we can put him on at 12 instead.
Yeah.
However, I think, yes, there's a level of him having a sense of humour and wanting to ruffle a few feathers and so on.
Yeah.
I do think a big bit of it is we have a World Cup coming up in 2 years' time. Squad places are limited. People need to be able to play multiple positions. So we put him in as able to play back row / centre. That is useful for a World Cup squad. And I said before this campaign, right? This is the moment where they start to think about 2027 and start to think about that three-peat. And he is going, I think, less 6-1 bench, less 7-1 bench, and that isn't obviously an option, is having someone who can cover multiple positions there. But more, okay, if he can fill in there and one of our centres can play as a forward, that frees us up to be able to pick, you know, a fifth scrum half in the squad going off the last World Cup squad.
Very true.
Yeah. It frees us up to be able to bring in 4 tight heads so that we can then rotate more during that pool stage and leave people to be fresher going into knockouts.
100%. And we could see, you know, like Marco van Staden playing as a hooker in the last World Cup, and he was trained there.
Dion Forey.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been a few situations like that before. And Grant Williams starting on the wing in the games against Romania in the last World Cup and Tonga, that we could see a situation like that if they draw like, I don't know, let's say Namibia in the next World Cup, if they even go. Yeah. But if they draw somebody, let's say they draw Hong Kong, it might be that they want Andre Esterhuizen to start a game at number 8 or something like that. On the other side of this, as you say, like there is a lot of this squad is already prepared for a World Cup. Like he could take any combination of the 60-odd players he has available to him to a World Cup and they'd be pretty good. Yeah. Right? They would be in contention to win the World Cup.
But how do you narrow it down as well from the 60, right? Like you need everyone to have multiple uses.
Yeah.
And so therefore you go, okay, this guy can play back row, he can play number 8, he can play 6, he can play 8, or he can play 12 or 13.
Yeah.
That's really useful. You want to build out those attributes.
Yeah. And I think, as I say, alluded to a minute ago, one of the areas I think he will try on this is instead of a back playing in the forwards, playing a forward in the backs. I think Quacker Smith playing as a winger is something that he will genuinely consider. Not just Quacker Smith, like he could probably give somebody like an Elric Lowe, who is often used as an edge forward at club level, who has got a great offload on him.
Is kick chase the problem though?
Yeah, potentially. But he can round that out. They've got a couple of years worth of training in which to develop these parts of these players' games. You know, that you kind of think that if, let's say, the 2019 World Cup was happening now, they'd potentially be looking at Scott Brits and going, can he play in the centres or at fullback or something like that? Can we manipulate this as an option in case there's an injury there? And I'm sure that he will have trained it a little bit. Like, obviously he went 7-1 for the last World Cup final, and they claimed they'd been training Cheslin Colby as a 9 in the week. And you question how much of your week in a World Cup final week you have been like using for that rather than just going for your starting player. But you've got to prepare for these scenarios, and there's no better preparation than Test match rugby.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see, because there are so many ballers in that South African pack that he could give a go in the back line at some stage next time they have a kind of, I guess, an emerging nation, a tier 2 nation, so to speak, that they come up against. So it's quite exciting. Crocker on the wing. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm into it. Piece of toy on the wing.
Yeah.
Obviously great under the high ball anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting option to have open. Overall, this South African performance, right? And again, we could break down the tries, but I don't think there's much point in doing it. No. I'm just like, they overpowered them, or they opened up with the kicking game. They were smarter. The real test will come in weeks to come.
They were better at rugby than them.
Yeah.
It's one of those games.
And I just think it's a mismatch. And I just think this is like the situation they're in, right? Japan have taken a wild swinging risk, and we got like closure on the fact that like Chosoku Rugby, I think, can go somewhere. I see the vision. I'm like, this can work. I think there's a world in which Chosoku Rugby does like, even if it ends up more like positionless rugby, Eddie's last mad idea to change the game forever, didn't work for the team he was building it with, but everyone now plays it, and it has increased number of tries being scored. I think there's a world in which Chosoku Rugby really takes off. Whether or not that leads to Japan improving, I don't know. Regardless, it is not going to work with that Japanese pack against that South African pack. So there we go.
The recent Canadian search in the Women's World Cup has been proof that kind of rugby can be world beating.
It can, but it's still got knocked over by England, who came with power, right?
It's a very good
point. And it became the same situation again.
No scrum, no win.
Exactly. What we're looking at is a world in which teams may start to diversify a bit more, like they did back in the 90s and early noughties, right?
Yeah.
We have some teams play really fast, some teams play kicking a lot, some teams play power. Yeah. And we may be seeing like
rock, paper, scissors, isn't it?
Exactly. And we may see that start to slide back in. And I think that's interesting. But you're looking at, right? There's no, in rock, paper, scissors, sometimes rock doesn't beat scissors. You're not like, oh, occasionally though, the rock goes on the outside, or the scissors goes on the outside and like cuts them from an interesting angle. Like, no, like every time the rock beats the scissors.
Yeah.
It beats it up physically.
It's so easy to get caught up in, as we do, we're the most guilty of this, rugby being a game of strategy and tactics. But sometimes rugby is just a game of brutality. Yeah. Sometimes rugby is as simple as you have 6'8" Snyman, the biggest man in the universe, and he is harder to bring to the floor and to outmuscle than most human beings are, because he has got that much of a physical advantage, and also he's really good at passing a rugby.
Yeah, there's a couple of offloads he threw at the weekend.
And I kind of wish he wasn't so insanely skillful, so you could call him a one-trick pony. But no, he just has to be world-class at everything, doesn't he? But that's a debate for another day.
Yeah. The one quick note, Ox's injury. Bit of a downer note. Will this impact the Springboks' chances going forward?
Obviously, he will be back, and you know,
but not this autumn.
Yes, it's a great loss to miss out on somebody like Ox and Che, who is the best loose head in the world. But we will look at a door opening, as we discussed before, for Gerhard's starting camp to get that starting number 1 jersey. I hope anyway. You know, they've got a lot of options there. You know, the likes of Jan Hendrik Vessels, I guess, could put his hands up.
Well, he put his hands somewhere else, which is the problem. But Thomas du Toit
playing the loose head.
You know, but like I think this is where Gerard Steinkamp's like I think this is his chance. Yeah. And we talk like I believe firmly if he gets his chance, he could establish himself as one of the top 3 loose heads in the world. Yeah. And I think he's got a real chance to do that now.
Yeah. I think there is a good chance he already is one of those top 3. Yeah. We just haven't seen the tape that exists because Ox has been playing in his place. And that's a really exciting thought for. It's horrible for Ox. It's horrible for South Africa to miss out on a world-class player. But they shouldn't be worried about who's filling his boots.
I get the same vibe I got off Tupou, got off Ollie Chesson for a bit. I'm like, if this guy gets the opportunity, he will prove he's world class, and this is opportunity.